Yes.
Good morning, ma'am.
So
Good
we are
morning,
supposed
ma'am.
to continue, yes, good morning, with political ecology and just enter into the crux of it. And I also have a couple of plans to share, which I'll be doing today. And it's also about like group assignments and evaluation and those things. So maybe let others join and we can we can start those discussions, but I think like first we should complete our discussion on the other two themes that you wrote yesterday, and then maybe you revised applying the political ecological lens on those themes, and see like what happens when you start looking into, or you start understanding environmental issues from political ecological perspectives. So, are there people or students who wrote on floods uh, yesterday? So, the theme on floods, the second theme. So, there were three themes yesterday: deforestation, floods, and urban water crisis. So, are there students who reflected on floods yesterday? Maybe one or two. Some of you must have, must have written down points, jotted down points on floods. So who have done so? Who had done so yesterday? Vaibhav, did you write yesterday? Orunendra, did you write yesterday? Orunendra, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I have written for deforestation yesterday only.
Deforestation. Okay.
Hello,
Prathamesh. Huh.
hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Sorry, ma'am, I could not hear you, ma'am. Can you
Yeah,
repeat?
yeah, yeah. So I just asked, what was the topic that you chose yesterday out of the three themes which were given to you?
Ma'am, actually, I did not attend yesterday's class, ma'am. I missed.
All right. So who is there who actually wrote on floods? Did anybody write on floods yesterday? No one. Urban water crisis?
Yes, ma'am. I've written points
Not
on
on that.
urban water crisis.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. Okay. Okay. So then let us start with urban water crisis. So Pranav, what have you written?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to present some facts which are backed by quantitative data because I
Mm-hmm.
believe that they hold more water, pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
And just to show that we who are living in urban cities, we feel that we'll just turn on a tap and we'll get an unlimited supply of water. Cape Town, it was 92 days away from drought. They called that as day zero. Although they managed to, push it back into the future indefinitely, had they reached day zero, there would have been a point where 4 million people were without water. Now, we've been taught in our school days that Earth is like 25% land and 75% water. So, why are we facing this crisis? Well, actually, 97% of that water is salty, 2% of it is ice. So, almost the remaining 1% is what we have to make do with. One solution that comes to mind is okay, 97% of the water is salty. Let's desalinate it. However, desalination is such an expensive procedure and such an energy consuming procedure that only 1% of the water that we use worldwide, that is the water that has been desalinated. So, for example, when we're studying about Rockstrom, we saw the 9 planetary boundaries. One of those was climate change. And climate change is what is making availability of water most erratic nowadays. Now, I don't know about you all, but in my school days, to save water, what I was taught was don't leave the tap on while you're brushing, bathe from a bucket, not from a shower. Okay, these changes are significant, are might be significant, but at a small scale. Where the majority of the water goes waste, I believe, is for agriculture and for industry. So this is some data that I've collected. For example, 74 liters of water goes in making one glass of beer. 130 liters of water in making 1 cup of coffee. And do you know how much water goes in making one cotton shirt? I'd like you all to make a guess.
20 liter.
2,500 liters. 2,500 liters of water goes away in making one cotton shirt. Another argument that I'll give, which might be an argument in favor of veganism as well, or switching to a plant-based diet, livestock are fed alfalfa. Those livestock are ultimately killed to make hamburgers for Americans. However, alfalfa takes 510 liters for 1 kg of it. So, and as the world is eating more and more like Americans, it's a worrying concern for me, because the amount of water that goes away in making one hamburger is 1,650 liters. It's not like the capitalists are blissfully unaware or ignorant of the situation. In fact, Goldman Sachs has said that water is the petroleum of the next century. And I saw this in a documentary. I don't know what this means, but it said that hedge funds has even started buying water. Also, the government is also responsible for this urban water crisis to an extent. Mexico City, for example, loses half of its drinking water to leaky pipes, which I believe can be attributed to lack of investment in building resilient water delivery systems. So yes, ma'am, these are the points that I collected for urban water crisis.
Very nice, actually. Thank you very much, Pranav, for this. And one of my colleagues, she's Maria Raska. So we work together, and Maria, now she was in Sweden, Uppsala University, but now she has just moved to Manchester. Very good work, and basically trained as a political scientist, but she worked with an interdisciplinary, actually a transdisciplinary team of hydrologists. And there's a student of hers called Saveli, and last year they published a fascinating article called "Don't Blame the Rain: Social Power and the 2017 Drought in Cape Town." So the issue that you have touched upon is a kind of same issue that Saveli and Maria have discussed in this particular article, that why this crisis actually took place, and why Cape Town had to encounter day zero, and how the historical how there are a lot of historical reasons and political political trends that to a great extent have shaped this water crisis in Cape Town, which otherwise cannot just be captured through quantitative data. So quantitative data is of course important, but why and how this context, historical context, the political context remains so important to understand water crisis in Cape Town. And so they have done this entire survey in the sense that the survey of the root causes that actually led to this crisis. So thank you for bringing this in, and also this inherent inequity that is there in terms of this inherent inequity that is there in terms of water access, and also the way the of course the capitalist market commodify water. So there is one particular, so if you see the cost structure, it's written there, I think it is written like offshoots, trajectories, criticisms, and then political ecology, tenets and principles. So all these things are written, so which means that there are several offshoots and there are several sub branches within the branch of political ecology. So one particular sub branch is what political ecology of water, and it is a very strong sub branch. So I covered a bit of it in one of my NPTEL lectures, again in the particular course called Water, Society and Sustainability, and it's there in the readings. So maybe we'll also watch it together. So I just kept it very simple, but then I also discussed some of the core tenets of political ecology, and then to see how we can actually or how rather those fundamental principles enable us to understand equity issues relating to equity and justice so far as water access and distribution is concerned. So thank you, for bringing it this in. So anyone else, Omi, would you like to discuss your points?
Yes, ma'am. So this is what I studied. I have particularly took the case of Shimla, where water mainly comes from snowfall. So there was a water scarcity in 2018, and then people blame that there is less of snowfall. But when we go deep into the study, we recognize that it's not just because of scarcity of snowfall or rainfall. This is because the city doesn't have proper infrastructure, and 40 to 50% of water is wasted into leakages. Uh, After that, there is urbanization and not there's no proper planning of the city. So basically, the water is wasted due to improper infrastructure and not having proper planning. So these are my main points that why this city faced it, and when the municipality was had to pump 45 mld of water, only worked to pump 18 to 20 mld of water in 2018, and then this resulted in scarcity of water. Also, there is no equal distribution of resources, so some people might get water and might not have any concerns with it, but other people do have concerns. Other than these factors, we also have deforestation. There is land insectification. There's urbanization, and when we use chemicals into the land, it pollutes water indirectly. That is the groundwater. That is the main source of water for many people. And our rivers are also being contaminated due to industrialization and not treating it properly. When we go into the data, we find out that only 23% of the sewage water is treated and then it is made safe for drinking. And what about other water? It's been left contaminated, and it also contaminates our rivers when it goes into the river, and the water body has been contaminated. So in major cities, the water is also not treated properly. Like in cities like Mumbai and Delhi, there are industries and people. There is a lot of urbanization, so people don't use the water sustainably, and then there are a lot of people, so they require more of food, more of water, more of everything. So that's where the water goes. So I think that not only we should not blame rainfall for it, but we should blame our improper planning and urbanization for the scarcity of water. So these are my points.
Yes, thank you again. Thank you very much, for highlighting on all these connected points. So this is also, I think, an approach which is very important and which is beyond the sectoral approach. What we call, there is an approach called the sectoral approach, which means that when you understand things just from looking into it from a particular sectoral point of view. So, for example, urbanization is one sector, right? Then pesticides or chemical industries, that is another sector. Then water contamination connected to this, but then they, unfortunately, people and disciplines and domains, they work in silos. And when they work in silos, so we don't have any other option but to really, the findings are outcomes of this sectoral approach. So it is now really important to make a move from this sectoral approach to integrated approach. So, and that is, that first and foremost, that has to be there in our mindset, in our perspective, in our awareness and understanding. Then only, we'll be able to come up with solutions which would be more and more inclusive and comprehensive. So I think what is very important in your, which what has come out in your discussion, or in your reflection, is the different, connecting points that should be understood and paid heed to together when we are actually discussing urban water crisis in Shimla. And it is not only the natural causes, of course natural causes are there, but how the our social responses and our designs and our infrastructure design and the choices that we make, political decision making, all these factors are involved in kind of facilitating or determining, shaping urban water crisis. But one very interesting point that you mentioned about these leaks or transmission leakage is also quite fascinating, because when we are discussing this, one problem or maybe one of the criticisms that political ecologists often face, for example I often face, is that people say that you provide lot of you provide everything from a negative point of view, so you just keep criticizing people, and then you keep criticizing the state, the government, the bureaucrats. So this political ecology is in that way so very declensionist, and people will start losing hope when they apply, when they will see things from the political ecological perspective. But that's not right, because if you see how political ecology as a subject, it had also developed and advanced in the recent years. You will see that a lot of interesting topics also have been a lot of interesting topics have come up. For example, when we also did a report on water justice, or rather injustice in we were doing a project, we did a project where we compared three cities from the global south. So one is this Cochabamba, Bolivia. You must have heard about Cochabamba, because Cochabamba is famous for its water wars. And then Kolkata and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Eastern Africa. So, and what we're trying to see is that where there are lack of policy driven initiatives. So many of the times, most of the times, the state fail to fulfill the needs of, for example, the urban poor. Because urbanization, if you also see the pattern, the spatial pattern or spatial scale of urbanization, you will see the way the cities keep expanding. So they expand, but at the same time, I know what we also see, that the cities are expanding, but infrastructures are not sufficient to cater to the needs of the expanding city. So this phenomena is known as urbanization without infrastructures. So, for example, the areas which were under panchayats, under rural, which were considered to be rural areas and under the administration of, or the jurisdiction of the panchayat, maybe those got kind of converted to become areas under or covered by municipality. But if you see that the roads are not good, they're not adequate, you will see that those parts or those pockets of the city, you will see that piped drinking water network is not there. So they are neither rural nor urban, and there is a phenomena also which is known as peri-urbanization. But what happens is that when there is lack of access to this kind of facilities, so for example water sanitation facilities, so what are the various array of practices that people come up with to solve their day-to-day needs? And we saw, for example, within the context of Kolkata, that in Kolkata also, when the water gets distributed from the supply points to all these different locations, in between there are some points where this transmission loss takes place. But at the same time, very interestingly, there are people, there are groups who collect water from those leakage points, and then there are different arrangements through which that water is sold, of course at a cheap price, but in the interior households. So there are array of practices and arrangements that one can see if one can minutely observe how in any particular thing, for example any resource allocation mechanism go on or operate within urban context, within rural context, within anywhere for that matter. So it is also important for us to to do ethnography. So, and when I will be discussing about the trends or also fundamental principles within political ecology, I think one major fundamental principle or one major approach within political ecology is why, along with scientific literature, ethnography or doing the field and participant observation remains so very important. And you will never be able to understand all these things if you don't go into the field to see what is actually happening. And interestingly enough, every field, it has its own narrative. The kind of things that will stress or kind of capture in Kolkata will be so very different from Mumbai. And there are interesting array of practices, arrangements, so many different things that you can't even imagine that how things work. But they also comprise major portion or component of the story relating to urban design, infrastructure, etc., which otherwise are not documented or captured in mainstream conventional literature or books. So from that perspective also, political ecology is very important, because through observation, through field, you are able to capture different kinds of practices, and not only capture but also test and validate the significance of some of these practices, because these practices are also important. Because along with, or again, when I said that, when there is lack of policy driven, lack of policy planning, so these are the bottom up needs driven practices, which the people pursue. It's almost like of the people, for the people, and by the people. And why I mean, I think it is important to also document these practices, because these practices can sometimes also be applied at skills, and the policy makers can kind of incorporate this knowledge, accommodate this knowledge, and maybe with some with a bit of a technical support or a bit of funding, these practices can also get improvised, or if not improvised, at least incorporated within the policy planning, because these systems are already existing. So you are getting it what I'm trying to say. So political ecology is not only it's wrong to kind of perceive political ecology as only a negative or declensionist kind of a perspective, but political ecology, by helping us to point out or to understand the deficit of the state, it at the same time help us to trace and identify the other potentials that are very much there, so far as socio-natural allocations or socio-natural reconfigurations in any particular site is concerned, right? So yes, so anyone else on urban water crisis want to say something, or want to add something which have not been discussed yet, which has not been discussed yet? Any final point on urban water crisis? So Mubashir, you were there in yesterday's class? Were you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so which theme did you choose?
Deforestation, ma'am.
Deforestation. Ankit? Ankit?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh? So,
Yes, ma'am.
so which was the topic for
Ma'am,
you?
deforestation.
Deforestation. Ranveer also deforestation?
Yes, ma'am.
Ranveer? So Ranveer, are you there? Anamika, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
So did you write yesterday?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I want to add some
Yes,
points.
Abhishek, I'm coming back to you. So Anamika,
Okay.
which was your topic yesterday?
Ma'am, I wrote on deforestation.
Okay. Yes, Abhishek.
So ma'am, like as you mentioned and what mentioned other students, I think one must point must be there, government policies and government schemes should be there, to face to overcome with this issue. Like many where I can like listen or observe that the limitation of using the water and also limitation the water supply, so it will also help to uh, manage the urban water crisis. And in factory, as also mentioned by Pranav, that like in making one bottle or maybe one cloth, we use a lot of water. So we can make a sustainable like plan, or maybe a like new plan to uh, do generate all the things new in a new form, so that we can manage these things, like urban water crisis not be there. So
So you're
that would be
saying
the
that
point.
there should be a lot of emphasis on the role of government.
Probably like they can also do something
Yeah, yeah,
for
sure,
that.
sure. That's the point. But yeah, so what I'm also trying to say that where there are policy deficits, right, Abhishek? So
Yes,
where
yes,
the
yes.
state does not work. So then how things have to run, right? We cannot just keep sitting idle. So see, things
Actually,
have to.
ma'am, the main problem is I know there are some government policies, but they are not implemented
Yeah, yeah,
in
that
the
is what. That is
ground
what.
root level.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look on this matter, like how to implement all those policies in the grassroots level, then we
Right.
can actually implement these policies
Yes.
uh, in a true
Yes,
manner.
yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of things in this. So, for example, one is the laws and the acts that are there. There are so many laws and acts in India which are otherwise, very good. They have a whole lot of potentials, but they are not implemented. So there are, or if I say they are not implemented, this is also not true. But maybe the implementation mechanism varies across different sites, and it depends on so many factors and variables, like the bureaucratic wheel, and the officials who are implementing this. So there are so many, and the people, how they are accepting that. So many other things are there. So, and like corruption and inequity, all these variables are there. So even if there are like similar sets of laws and rules and acts, the implementation varies due to several factors. But what is important is that, and if you do ethnography, you will see that where there is dearth of implementation, people, they have come out with, sometimes, not always, but they, because there are also negative stories that people have tried to come up with strategies or tactics that are actually not eco-friendly at all, but that actually maybe through those tactics, through the implementation of those tactics, they are being able to gain short-term benefits. But in the long term, if you take the long term view, then it is actually harming the environment, and people don't have awareness on that. So that is also there. But on the other hand, there are also several innovative tactics and strategies, different levels of grassroots innovation, through which people are managing. And so what I'm trying to say is that there should be, now what I'm saying is important, so there should be co-production of knowledge. So knowledge should not come from only one particular source, but knowledge has to be, knowledge can come from multiple sources. And it will be important for any engineer, I think, to also remain aware of the different sources from which knowledge has the chance, has the opportunity to get generated. So that time you should not say that I have not learned this in at my BTech courses at IIT Kharagpur, so these principles do not work, or they should not work. We should not take into consideration these principles. No. So what I'm trying to say is that you have to you also have to be a participant engineer when you are dealing with a crisis. I know there are challenges, it's this sound very well, and it normatively this is beautiful, but there are real life challenges, and there you will face several other problems. But you should not in any way, you should not ignore or neglect the very fact that uh, you have to kind of remain very open to different avenues, alternative avenues of knowledge production and generation, right? So otherwise you will not be able to really come up with very sustainable and resilient solutions when you are working at the local context, right? So yes, So
Ma'am,
these are the points that I wanted to make. Any yes, Aditya?
ma'am, I have two more points to make regarding
Yes.
the urban water crisis. Like, let us say, no doubt that climate change and other factors are there, but even the amount of rainfall that we get, we are not able to utilize it fully. So,
Right.
so that is one issue. And also, in farming practices, lots of chemical fertilizers are used
Huh.
in order to boost crop production. So that will ultimately pollute the groundwater, and that water is essentially used to grow crops. So it enters the food chain and also like affects health of human beings.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So so what
so
you, if I understand you correctly, you were also talking about these urban rural linkages, and also this surface water groundwater integration, right?
yes, ma'am.
Yes, absolutely. And also, like, if you see that, there are so many things. Like, for example, in several parts of our country, we were very advanced from the very beginning. Honestly, when people are saying IKS, which is this, Kharagpur has also come up with its IKS center, which is this, what is this, Indic knowledge systems and all. There is this calendar, lot of controversy like every year, and it becomes so difficult for all of us to face this situation even. But anyway, I'll not go into the bad part of it, but the positive part of it is that, yes, honestly, our country really, it had several very interesting engineering and scientific developments and grassroots innovation, which are simply amazing. And the best part of India is that, it's so complex, huge, and diverse. So, for example, if you just take these different states, so different states and even different districts within state, they have their own water management techniques. They have their own water technological practices. They have their own, they have their own seeds. So before this introduction of GMO or HYV, high yielding varieties, all these regions, and these regions, each regions are, each region is a separate ecosystem zone, right? So, for example, Sundarbans, the Indian Sundarbans Delta, which is infamously famous for floods and erosion. So there, every time there is flood, there will be intrusion or ingression of saline water in the agricultural field, and the field will remain submerged for a period of like 6 months. And people have to face it, and lot of livelihoods crisis, etc. But in the Sundarbans, since the time of antiquity, since historical times, people actually used to have the knowledge of harvesting what is known as salt tolerant seed varieties. So the seeds that were used in Sundarbans are not the seeds which were actually used in, for example, the hilly region. So hilly region again had their separate varieties of seeds. The drought prone region had their separate varieties of seed. So we had so many different varieties of seeds, and this was absolutely part of our rich indigenous knowledge system. But unfortunately, with the green revolution, with the coming of GMO, with HYV, with better than me that what has happened in this chemical industrial sector. Unfortunately, the seeds have become standardized, and farmers are not only incurring losses, but it is definitely doing direct harm to the soil. But big companies, big capitalist lobbies, including Monsanto and all, they are part of the story. So what will you do? But the good thing is that it's not that we just have to be like passive victims. If you see, or if you are aware of what is actually happening in different parts of India, even in Maharashtra, in South India, there are lots of protests, and there are very powerful and radical think tanks which have pressurized the government and these private companies to kind of uh, become aware of the knowledge of the people. And in many places, I would not say organic farming, because that is again another it has another sets of its own politics. So not organic farming, but reliance on small scale agricultural practices where profits directly go to the farmers, than the entire range of this capitalist lobbies and also middlemen. And what is most important is that these traditional practices and traditional seed varieties and traditional inputs, equipments, to a great extent are being retained and revitalized. That is the most important. And we have, because we know now the significance of this. We know when Sundarbans became aware of this knowledge, when Aila hit Sundarbans in 2009. That is the major super cyclonic storm that devastated, ravaged Sundarbans like anything. And then look, all the scientists, they were, and of course people and the scientists, they like, they had no other option but to think like what happened in Sundarbans previously when cyclones used to hit the delta. And then from the pages of history they found out, and from oral interviews, from oral history techniques, through oral history techniques, they found out that Sundarbans is extremely rich with the salt tolerant seed varieties. But with the introduction of this, there's a separate variety of green revolution which was introduced in Bengal. The knowledge system was absolutely gone. So then a group of scientists, many, like more than 50 people, experts and people from NGOs and grassroots organizations together, they started hunting these seeds in different repositories, including this national, I'm forgetting the name, so it's in Delhi. So the place where seeds are kept actually, and they've managed to find, so they then found out that there were 17 varieties of this kind of salt tolerant seed varieties, which the farmers of Sundarbans had knowledge of. But unfortunately, in 2009, most of them did not have the knowledge, because they already become detached from the process, because it was replaced by the seeds, or the general standard HYV seeds that that otherwise are sown in the entire country, an outcome of capitalist agriculture. But then through a whole lot of efforts, initiatives, finally, to a great extent, the knowledge could be retained. And then when those seeds were sown, of course, Sundarbans had success stories. So now people to a great extent have moved back to those traditional, knowledge. I'm not saying that this traditional knowledge is absolutely free from its own constraints. No. But at the same time, of course, for a country like India, which has so diverse, ecosystem zones, you cannot actually rely on universal standard sets of principles. So, yes. So can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So anyway, so yes, so I think we had enough of discussion on that. Any final point by anyone? So I've not done floods. So would you like to, jot down few points on floods and keep it as your homework? Possible? So maybe we can have some discussion later in one of our classes. Is it possible for all of you to also write a note on floods, keeping in mind the political ecological perspective? Possible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now let me come to some of the basic things, because I also have to to an extent follow the traditional pedagogical method. So and because you also need to know some names and the history of how this subject actually emerged, and then what are the who are the various authors, and what are the various works that are included in this domain called political ecology. What are the major what are the distinct attributes of this particular domain which makes it distinct from any other domain for that matter, but what are also the limitations and some weaknesses of this domain. And that is why, and that is where other frameworks also become significant. And that is why my suggestion would be that when we are discussing or focusing on any ecological context, we should not be hardcore political ecologists or hardcore resilient scholars, not like that, but rather it will be important for us to understand, to unfurl the ecological context from all the different kinds of perspectives and all the different kinds of approaches and frameworks that is there in our knowledge base. So that will make the whole thing more and more more inclusive, of course, more inclusive, and because you don't leave out certain things. So the more you are aware of different approaches, the more I think you are empowered to understand socio-ecological interconnections in the best manner possible. So yes, so that is why I will not, I will not ask you to put weightage on any particular domain over the other. No, that should not be the case. Okay, so now coming to a bit of a history of political ecology, I would suggest that have you got the chance to just check the readings folder, all of you? In our drive? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Last I saw 2 books over there.
Yes, in political ecology, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So there are 2 books, and one is this handbook, which is a more recent one. And I mean, both are recent, but the handbook is more recent than the book by Paul Robbins. So there are 2 books. One is by Paul Robbins, which is political ecology. It's a very, it's considered as the textbook in political ecology. But if you ask me, I will not, suggest you to go, to consider Paul Robbins's book as the textbook, because after that, lot of advances have been made, in this particular field. And also, if you go through political ecology book, the critical introduction book by Paul Robbins, you will, yes, you will get a hang of it, but it's not written in a very friendly fashion. So it is provocative. It will elicit your mental, it will elicit your neurons to a great extent. But if you have to exactly understand that when did the subject emerge, who are the people, what are the different books, what are the various themes, and what are the different criticisms, what are the methodological approaches that political ecology apply. So from that perspective, I would not say that Paul Robbins is the best, but you can, or you should definitely at least go through the introduction of the book. But the second one, which is the Routledge Handbook, it's a big fat volume, because you can see so many chapters, and I think 4 or 5 sections within the book, and multiple chapters by very renowned political ecologists, and also by the more young people who are now part of this domain. But what is very significant about the handbook is again the introductory chapter, the introduction. So if you go through the intro, so what my suggestion to all of you would be to go through the introduction of this handbook on political ecology. And it is written in a lucid language. It is not difficult at all. Now, saying this, I would also like to say that, if you take a look into our course structure, you will see that after this, we'll be actually moving into another framework of, ecological sciences or ecological social sciences, which will be socio-ecological system, which will be actually covered by Roktima, who is specializing on socio-ecological system. So you will see that we will not have more time on political ecology. But again, you can understand that political ecology is such a broad thing, and just 3 hours are not sufficient for political ecology. So my suggestion would be that let us now start with the group assignment. I think it's time. And Amit, I think, has prepared a document, because I asked him, I gave him, we discussed about a method through which, this you can be divided among groups, and you can work as groups on different assignments. And so one is that I can just, kind of come up with a sheet and assign you topics. And the other thing is that let us, for first 1 or 2 groups, let us do it like this, because we have time, and then we will see like what I'll do. So, and it does not mean that I will not be assigning topics, quickly. I will do it by next month. Definitely all the groups will be assigned with their topics by next month. By February this will be over. And if you also take a look into the course structure, you will see that we have time for a group I have kept slots for group presentations at the fag end of this, almost the fag end of the course. One maybe in March and the other group presentations just at the fag end of the course in April. So, but my suggestion now, I think it will be good that as we are doing political ecology, so let us, so I'm just seeking your suggestion here, and let us collectively decide on this. So you will see that there is a slot on the 1st, and the 1st is a Tuesday. So if possible, can you just open the, or rather, I'll share the screen.
Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Ma'am, I just thought of something now.
Uh-huh.
That is, ma'am, flood is caused by deforestation.
Yes.
Because deforestation leads to overwhelming of CO2 in the atmosphere, that causes greenhouse effect, global warming, and that causes melting of the glaciers, leading to flood.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
that is the thing that I just
Just came to your mind.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Snigdho. What I will also suggest, Snigdho, when you prepare for this 9 planetary boundaries framework propounded by Johan Rockstrom and colleagues, you also concentrate on the cross-boundary interactions. So there are 9 planetary boundaries, right? And there are also correlation across. So if one boundary gets affected, then what happens, to the other boundary? Right. So there are cross-scale complexities. And the example that you gave right now is a very good example of, this cross-scale complexities. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So once more, you also, when you will be reading that article, so concentrate on the cross skills. You will be fascinated to know this cross skill, and it is important, for all of us to know the inter-boundary or cross-boundary interconnections. So this is a good example of that. Thank you. So now let us take a look into the course structure, and can you see it? Can you see the document?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so you see that there yes, here first February there is one slot which was initially kept as a slot for classcom assignment. So I am thinking aloud now. I'm just thinking that why don't I turn this particular 2-hour class, why don't we not have group presentations? Maybe the first 2 groups can present on this date and on political ecology. And what should be their thematic coverage, etc. Everything I'll be discussing. So no need to worry at all, because you have one more week and you can prepare. So this is the sheet again which Amit has prepared. And we have definitely followed a methodology. It's not just random. So can you see this group assignment distribution? So group.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So the first 2 groups. The first includes Shoikot, Malga, Kaushik. Shoikot, Kaushik, Roshan, Dhruv, Orpit, Abhishek, Vaishnavi, and Sugandh. All of you are here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Most of you. Okay. And the second group comprises of Sankalp, again Dhruv, Mihir, Jakteshwar, Aryan, Abhishek, Pradeep, Abdul. All of you are here.
Yes, ma'am.
Second group, how many? Only one voice I could hear.
Yes, ma'am.
Others? 2. Mihir? Pradeep?
Yes, ma'am.
Abdul? Pradeep is there. Okay. Abdul? These are not very regular people. Jakteshwar, Parmar Dhruv, Sankalp. So Shorodeep, are you there?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
हाँ,
ma'am.
हाँ, हाँ. So what you need to do now is that you
Yes,
need
ma'am.
ঠিক আছে. So what you need to do is that you need to send warning messages and warning mails to the students.
Yes, ma'am. We are keeping a
Because the
track.
deregistration link is also active now. So these are soft threats, but just for your own good. So yeah, because then how will the group work? If you can see, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes,
from
ma'am.
the names only, from the names only, I can make out, that I have not seen these people much in class. I remember
Yes, ma'am.
Mihir, I remember Aryan, I remember Abhishek, maybe Pradeep, but not the others. Jakteshwar,
Yes, ma'am.
Parmar
Yes.
Dhruv,
Yes, ma'am.
Sankalp, who are they?
They are not regular actually. When we are
That is
keeping
what.
track.
Yes.
Yes,
So then
ma'am.
the
Me
group
and
will
Farzan have the
unnecessarily
plan.
suffer, no?
Yes, ma'am.
So what you do again now, I will be suggesting a very problematic, making a problematic suggestion. But the first two group presentation really need to be very good to set the tone. So you just restructure group 2.
Okay, ma'am.
Because group 2 has to present on the first. So
Okay,
who
ma'am.
are the more regular student? Let me just take a look. Just 1 second. Fabin, Snigdho, Pratyushari, de Kaushik. This is a good group. Fourth one. So group, let me not then just restructure group, but just let me do another trick. So group 1 and group 4 will be presenting on the first. It should not be difficult. I will absolutely help you. But the group assignment for both these groups will be political ecology. Possible? I will send separate emails to all of you today.
Yes, ma'am. Possible.
Okay, very good. So on the first there will be group presentation. So we have 2 hours. So what you will do is that each group will be presenting for maybe, so how many people? 8 people. So each group will be presenting for roughly 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll be having 15 minutes of question answer round and discussions. All right. And of course send an email, and all this information would be there in the information folder in a G Drive, plus separate emails will be sent to you. Amit, you can mute yourself.
Ma'am, can you show the list of remaining groups as well?
Yeah, I'll send it it will be there. It will be uploaded in the folder. Can you see this? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. It is
Yes, ma'am.
visible.
Yeah, take a look. And Shauradip and Amit, both of you send
Yes, ma'am.
reminders to all the irregular students.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, and just tell them that 2 more classes they are not seen. I don't have any option but just to deregister them, because it will otherwise affect the whole class.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Sure.
Done? You have taken a look? All of you? Can I close it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, no more group after 6? No more
What?
group after 6?
After 6? 7? This is group 7.
Yeah, okay, I'm seeing.
Gayatri, Pranav, Harsh, Pankaj, Aman, Ayushi, Govind. All right. Yes. So, yeah. So we'll be so right now I'm planning that 40 marks would be assigned for group assignments. So 20 marks on the presentation of the whole group. And how I would do it, I would definitely lay out everything, no need to worry. And 20 marks on the write up. So you have to submit. So when group 1 and group 4 will be presenting on next Tuesday, I will not expect the write up then and there. So you will get some more time. So you will maybe you will have 2 more weeks to go with. So maybe not maybe. So in the middle of February, you will be submitting your assignment, the written document. So the written assignment will be submitted in the middle of February. And first you have to make the you have to make oral presentation as a group. So I'll just send separate emails to all 16 of you, right? But the topic for you remain political ecology, because I will not be able to cover everything. So it will be your responsibility to basically, cover political ecology, place political ecology, present political ecology in the best possible manner. So, and definitely I will lay out the structure for you. And I think if that structure is followed, then to a great extent, political ecology will be clear to all of us, right? So that you have to do. And I will send separate emails to you today, latest by tomorrow morning, right? So now coming to, and just one thing, that 40 marks are assigned for group assignments. I will also let you know the other marks allotted to other components of the of evaluation. So it has to be 100. So to 40 marks, which is the highest weightage, it should go into group assignment, and it will be fun. Don't worry at all. So in the last 2-3 semesters, I've received brilliant group assignments, and you'll be amazed to see those reports. And this time we also have a plan to launch our own website next month. So if that gets ready, I can have a couple of interesting integrated plan about how I can also make some of these very good assignments visible in our websites as well, Anyway, so that's a different thing. But right now, let us come back to political ecology. So what I have told you, that the book that you really need to go through is the handbook, but the first chapter, introduction, and you will see, it very in a very appropriate way. It lays out the context that led to the emergence or foundation of political ecology as a domain. So can you make wild guesses? When do you think that political ecology as a domain actually emerged? Can you guess? Who would like to make a bold guess? When can the subject emerge? When can the domain emerge?
I'm sorry, ma'am, can you repeat
this
the question?
requirement for
Huh?
means when people realize that it is not just about the various environmental factors, but the human intervention.
Yes, and
how
when was the time period? Can you make a guess?
Ma'am, 1970s.
1970s. And why is Snigdha? Yes, you are right, and both Aditya and Sindhu are right. And why do you think 1970s is an important point?
Ma'am, because it was post-independence, and things were like it was growing. Like we have been just out of British rule, and we are developing our own things, and then we got to know that we are getting to know that we are we should think about our own well-being, and for
Right.
that we need to make the environment we need to look after the environment first. And this, and as we know, in India things happen very late.
Yes.
So it was almost more than 2 decades to, it takes 2 decades to develop a consciousness. So as from that, if we calculate, it's 1970s. Also, I read that the first Sulabh Shauchalaya, it was developed by Dr. Bindeswar Pathak in that year only, 1970. So
Yes.
that's why I thought it is the time.
Thank you, Snigdha, for your reflections, and you are right also. And yeah, even if we think about the global context, and Aditya also mentioned that when people started having this consciousness, there was the dawn of consciousness that no more mainstream environmental sciences knowledge can help us to address our crisis, because the crises are so much anchored and rooted, in the within the social context. So, and also, 1970s is important because, as you mentioned, that India become independent, but not only India, but 1960s and 70s, actually from 50s only, it's the era of decolonization. So most of the countries which were colonized by the Western powers started getting independence, started becoming independent, and there was the end of the colonial rule, and this is also the period of decolonization. And so the period of decolonization for most of the countries in the global south is actually 1950s, because after the end of the Second World War, the United Nations and most importantly United Nations emerged, and the country started gaining independence and become sovereign. But at the same time, the era of now what I'm saying is very important. At the same time, the era of decolonization is also dotted with the era of development, quote unquote. Now, what is this development? So the countries became decolonized. So the countries became free from the power and rule of the Western, Western powers, and then the political or the economic logic that was provided by the international or the transnational think tanks like the United Nations, etc., and also the other three very important organizations or corporations came up: the World Bank, the WTO, World Trade Organization, and the IMF. huh? So these three organizations also came up with a logic that these countries which were like colonized for so long, for 200, 300 years, unfortunately these countries had remained underdeveloped. So it was the responsibility of the global north to actually make global south, quote unquote, developed. And that is why you will see the promotion and the introduction and implementation of so many development projects in the otherwise decolonized parts of the world. So India, for example, during from that time, so 1950s, 60s, 70s, what happened is that you can see, like, quote unquote, all these development projects in terms of the development of multi-purpose river valley schemes, like the dams, big hydraulic infrastructures. Then you will see green revolution in the agrarian front, and then you will also see urbanization, right? So Nehru's planned city and those things. But and this is not only for India but also for the rest of the world and rest of the decolonized world. And after a particular point of time, from 1960s, end of 1960s only, the problems got extremely visible, because this era of development caused more severe socio-ecological repercussions than benefits, honestly. And it displaced people from their livelihoods. It kind of floods intensified. There were a lot of problems and challenges within the agrarian sector. Urbanization also, to a great extent, aggravated poverty. So people started getting aware of the fallacy of the so-called development. Again, when I'm saying all this, you should not think that I'm making linear statements, but there are like huge data sets and fact sheets that show the kind of socio-ecological repercussions and ramifications caused by this era of development or these multiple development projects. uh, it's not that there are no benefits or benefits were not honest, but at the question, that the most important question that one needs to raise is that development for whom and development at what cost. So when the challenges or the problems became so evident, mostly in terms of loss of traditional livelihoods, displacements, loss of or disruption of occupation, etc. So there were also large scale protests worldwide. So on one hand, in North America and in Europe, we find environmental the dawn of environmental consciousness, because by this time it was getting clear from several radical books or reports which were getting published, including the authentic and the famous book by Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, published in 1961, and then Limits to Growth by the MIT students in 1970s, just one decade after Rachel Carson published her Silent Spring. So there was the dawn of this consciousness that environment, we are losing environment, and if this continues, then our doomsday is not far. So when this was going on in the north, in the south, people were struggling with their livelihoods, because people are, in countries like India, for example, you mentioned yesterday. So Oshiki mentioned yesterday that that there are like this ecosystem dependent communities who who depend on the on forests, on pasture lands, on water for their daily livelihoods. So economy and ecology are not disconnected. So when ecological disruption started taking place, it directly affected, it directly hit their stomach, right? So and on one hand, north had this dawn of environmental consciousness, and on the other hand, south absolutely was became aware of the fact that how livelihoods needs and ecological preservation are connected, in these parts of the world, where there are plenty of ecosystem dependent communities. So ecology needs to be preserved, conserved, not in the way that environmental economists would suggest, or not in the way environmental economists or the ecological scientists will make recommendations, but in the way that would actually be able to cater to the most important needs of the majority section of people. And that is why 1970s is so important. And you will see that worldwide, 1970s is important for the movement, for the different movements that actually happened during this time. The movements that place or that put forward ecology at the or that concentrated on ecology as the center of everything. And the I mean, it got absolutely clear and evident that nature needed to be protected, but definitely to address people's needs, majority, right? And there were radical protests, and there were like a lot of petitions, lot of radical things going on, and these provided the context. This transforming context played a very important role in the emergence of disciplines like political ecology, which brought to the fore that the idea that politics is not free from ecology, rather politics is inherently ecological and ecology is inherently political, right? And there are some debates, there are some controversies relating to who first started this discipline, or which group first put forward political ecology as a separate approach. And then there are experts or people who think that there is a particular tradition, or there is a group of scholars who were geographers, who actually started political ecology as a separate field, and they are Brooke, Bailey, and all they are the like group of geographers, human geographers, who did or who conducted a lot of study on land, or on the issue of land degradation and land erosion in parts of Latin America. So that is how political ecology emerged. But then today people actually don't accept the fact, but they rather they rather believe that political ecology as a tradition, it has roots. 70s, of course, provided the context, but it definitely has roots. So from when people started understanding socio-ecological, how do I say, like socio-ecological equations in a different way, by concentrating on politics, by concentrating on the economic mode of production, definitely they must be having some kind of background or some kind of prior understanding through which they could actually implement that political and economic perspective of understanding, right? So that cannot happen on a single day. So that is why, okay, no problem, Abhishek. So that is why you know these people or rather the experts now argue, and I think I agree with them, that political ecology, it has very strong Marxist roots. It has very strong Marxist roots, and by Marxist root, it means you don't need to worry, because very very unfortunate, it's really, and I will share my pain, whether you are happy with this or not. I really care a bit less, but I have to share my pain now when I am saying Marxist roots, or when I would now talk about Karl Marx a bit, because it's really important to eradicate confusion, because the way Karl Marx is portrayed and projected now, especially by even by our country, it's painful to see that. Also, who is Karl Marx? So he is not someone who how do I say, like, Karl Marx is portrayed as someone who propagated violence, and Marxism is something which is inherently violent and is associated with bloodshed and whatnot. And Marxists thus should be slaughtered, and the Marxists are dangerous, aggressive. It's a very skewed and, how do I say, very faulty understanding of the entire doctrine of Marxism, because Marxism is something, of course, drawing insights and drawing everything from the writings of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, his collaborator. So they wrote extensively on political economic mode of production, on the various stages of civilization. So how history moved on from one stage to the other, from slavery to primitive communism to slavery to feudalism to capitalism, and different modes of capitalism again. And then the dream, or then the aspiration was, whether it will be possible to go back to primitive communism, but not in the primitive form, but in a different form, because by that time the temporal context have already changed. And if you take a look into Karl Marx's original writings, volumes of writings, of course, you will see that Marx is one of the first political philosophers who address the issue of sustainability. And that is why the ecological Marxists, so people mainly who are based at the University of Oregon, and their disciples, people like John Bellamy Foster and several other people, Richard York, and many names I can take, but I'm unnecessarily not going to take those names. But if you read their books, because I think I had mentioned about John Bellamy Foster a number of times, and because I am a great admirer of his works, and like John Bellamy Foster, if you read his works on climate change, you can immediately understand the politics of climate change. So in that way, people who were trained in the Marxian school of thought, and again, my disclaimer is Karl Marx is not the propagator of violence or, bloodshed. It is such a substandard, projection of Karl Marx and the Marxian theory. If you don't believe me, please, go through the literature. Ample literature is there. Please don't be purchased by this kind of typical right wing, how do I say, I think I should stop now, but there is a lot of pain. And what I would like to place before all of you is that be very conscious citizens, and be conscious, students, not to fall prey into the very cheap and substandard, kind of indoctrination that the statecraft is planning, or they have already floated. And unfortunately, majority of the people have fallen, prey to this. So don't fall prey to this. If you have any doubt, any confusion, you just yourself validate the truth. And if you, if you are not exposed to the Marxian school of thought, then you lose whole lot of, critical understanding. You lose the entire critical edge to understand the world and the world system. So that is why it is important for us to get exposed to the Marxian school of thought, of course, and to the Marxian theory and the Marxian political, economic, theoretical discourses, from where political ecologists have grown a lot. So the route to political ecology, or the route to political ecologists, have been provided by the Marxian school of thought for sure. And Karl Marx is a big name, is one of the major, is one of the major, how do I say, propounders of who fleshed out the relationship between society and ecology. And from Karl Marx's writing, it was absolutely evident that how society and nature are not disconnected. So if you are discussing nature, of course society is part of it, and vice versa. And this understanding is very important, because otherwise, if you remember our yesterday's class, then first the way you understood deforestation, and later when you applied the political ecological lens, and then you understood deforestation, I'm sure you know now that why this political ecological lens is important. So these political ecologists drew their insights and drew their sources from the Marxian tradition. And two very important name. One is David Harvey. So David Harvey again is a geographer. So David Harvey and Neil Smith, and later Michael Watts. These are few names you have to remember. So these three experts or scholars or researchers, so they started rigorously studying various ecological issues, from land degradation to urbanization to water crisis. And they finally remarked, or rather they demonstrated that if you just look into the, or if you just if you measure the levels of pollution, or if you run quantitative exercises to understand a pollution, that is fine, but you will not be able to solve it. Because again, as I am repeating since yesterday, that without understanding historical, political, social context, even cultural context, it will not be able to capture the complex problem of pollution. And pollution is not only pollution, but it is also related to other ecological constraints. So as Snigdha pointed out, the relationship between deforestation and floods. And as I think someone else also pointed out, I think Pranav also pointed out about Cape Town. And so it is not, the day zero, but rather the context that led to led the citizens of Cape Town to face, that day in their life. So how social power, how the historical context played a very important role. And that is why, though rain is important, but rain is not the only reason due to which this water crisis actually took place. So let us not blame the rain, but let us also take a look into the social power, that caused this drought in Cape Town. So these kind of understanding, these lanes of application, for the first time, this David Harvey and Neil Smith, Michael Watts, they brought to the fore in a very extensive, explicit manner. And then after that, within 20 years, so roughly between 1970s and 1990s, there was proliferation of works in this particular domain. So in this particular domain, by this I mean that people really started looking into the problems by taking a serious look into their root causes and dispersed implications. And as I mentioned yesterday, they started mapping the various actors, the networks, the roles and responsibilities played by different individuals, communities, organizations, right? Who are the losers, who are the gainers? These are the fundamental questions in political ecology. So what are the three things that actually distinguish political ecology from other domains? And in this handbook, these editors rightly mention that these three things are: one, theoretical commitment; second, methodological commitment; and third, political commitment. So these are the three things that distinguishes political ecology from other approaches or domains. So who would like to make a guess on what could be theoretical commitment in political ecology? What is political ecology's theoretical commitment? Anyone?
I think theoretical commitment is what we talked about earlier, the consciousness and the ideas that started floating, that the environment and politics are not absolutely, they are not disjoint, they are interconnected, and that I think is the theoretical commitment.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right. So I will try to read out. Just give me a second.
Ma'am, can I give a try?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, in my opinion, like theoretical commitment refers to the actual means what studying about what the problem actually is with respect to the environmental factors. And political commitment refers to the various means interplay of the two, means like how human intervention and policy making also affects it. So that's the difference between these two. And
Yes.
methodological
So
is
when
like
Aditya, you are mentioning this, you are touching upon slightly on the third commitment as well, which is of course good because they are related.
And methodological is like how you are means not just making policies but also like having actual implementations of them, so as to means see the effects and not just doing things on paper.
Yes, thank you. So what I'll do is that it is written in the problem with political ecology or other frameworks that I'll be exposing you to in this environmental humanities course is that sometimes they're written in a bit difficult way. It may become difficult for for people who are not trained in political ecology to understand, and that is one of the criticism, and I accept that criticism. And so we are trying hard now that how to make political ecology and environmental humanities a field that anyone, even a vendor in the market can will have on his lip what is political ecology. It has to percolate inside. But the problematic part is that till date we really unfortunately it talks about the subaltern, but the way things are written, it's a bit elitist, and that is a criticism, and that I will accept because this is true. So what you have already mentioned, that is it, that is exactly what this theoretical commitment is all about. But I would like you to take to read from the handbook, because let me help you a bit, because otherwise you will get lost. So I'll share the screen.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Can I guess, like, I
Yes.
have an idea.
Yes,
Ma'am,
Pranav.
I am thinking like that these three commitments are like various three stages. Like first we decide the theory on how we will implement it, and
Right.
after that we decide like how in the physical world we will implement in methodology commitment, And
Yes.
after we have the full plan of how we will do it, when we will do it, what are the
Mm,
factors we
mm,
require,
mm,
then we
mm.
go to the politicians to discuss on a political level to make a plan.
Right. Right, Pranav, you are not wrong. You are not wrong in saying this, that this is a three-step methodology, right? So yes, you are right, but also it can take place in a linear fashion from theoretical to uh, the second stage, or the second step of methodological to the third step of political commitment. That is absolutely right. But at the same time, that when you are sometimes this linear chronology also can get blurred. So I think with more and more examples, you will be able to understand it. But what you have pointed out, that this is a three-step method, that is also not wrong, right? So what now I would like you to do? So Pranav, would you like to read the section that I would ask you to read now? Pranav Mehratra.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. Yeah,
Hmm?
ma'am. Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, so read this. This part. AJ. Theoretical commitment. First, from here, first to yes, this much. Yes, you can read now.
Yes, ma'am. These are the first a theoretical commitment to critical social theory and a post-positivistic understanding of nature and the production of knowledge about it, which views these are inseparable from social relations of power. Much political ecological work is theoretically Catholic, which roots in Marxistic political economy, but also often influenced by post-structuralism, post-colonialism, and feminist geography. Thus, political ecology is closely associated with radical scholarship and a rejection of positivistic approaches to social relations and environmental science. As Robbins, chapter 6, this volume, notes, political ecology plays the roles of trickster, relentlessly critiquing conventional science and policy in order to formulate alternative understandings of the world.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Pranav. I will explain it a bit now. So I think all of you mean, three or four of you who attempted to flesh out, this theoretical commitment in political ecology. I think you are already pointed out about this, but you have not touched upon things like post-structuralism, post-colonialism, and feminist geography and all, because this is something different, and which maybe you don't know, or maybe you know, but you are not aware with the terminologies, but you know it. Okay, so I will now elaborate on it a bit more. So Aditya has already mentioned that, when I asked the first question, that when do you think political ecology emerge, and why do you think political ecology emerge? Yeah? So Aditya and Snigdho, both of them, I think they have mentioned that, it emerged because people understood that the conventional way through which ecological problems were being addressed, they are no more sufficient. They are absolutely inadequate. That is what is written in the last sentence, that that political ecology plays the role of the trickster, right? And it criticizes conventional science and policy, and it definitely criticizes conventional science and policy because it understands that it's insufficient to kind of make people understand the real roots of ecological crisis. And that is why, as it criticizes conventional science and policy, that is why it is committed to come up with, to formulate alternative understandings of the world. So when you are criticizing, this framework is inadequate, the previous frameworks are inadequate, so then you have the impulse now to develop or formulate your own framework that will give a better understanding, that will provide a better worldview to understand socio-ecological interconnections. So political ecology does that, and that is its theoretical commitment, because as it understands that the previous science policy frameworks, conventional sciences, are inadequate, that is why it is theoretically committed to reformulate, or sorry, to rather formulate alternative understandings of the world. of the natural world, of the socio-natural world. Now, then how would it, kind of do justice to its theoretical commitment? So it draws insights from post-structuralism, post-colonialism. You can see these words here, right? Post-structuralism, post-colonialism, feminist geography. So what is post-structuralism then? So post-structuralism, very quickly, it is a very interesting, school of thought. And this was, feedback loop, Snigdha. Yes. So that is why I told Pranav that, Pranav, you are not wrong. So it can be a 3-step methodology, but at the same time, it's we have to also have a non-linear understanding of these 3 commitments. So there is definitely the feedback loop idea sounds best. So anyway, now I was trying to explain post-structuralism. So have you heard the name of Michel Foucault? He's a French philosopher, very famous, and Michel, one amazing books. And sometime, after the semester, if you get some time, or if you want to just, if you have some pastime, etc., you can sometimes go through Michel Foucault's book. And then there are books like Madness and Civilization, and there are books like Discipline and Punish. So this book called Madness and Civilization, it starts with a sentence, and that's my favorite sentence. So the first sentence is, not to be mad is also one kind of madness. So, but anyway, so Michel Foucault shook the, the theoretical scholarship that existed prior to him. And he's the French philosopher who started producing brilliant pieces of work during the 1960s, and with Michel Foucault and other people, of course, but of course Michel Foucault in the limelight, post-structuralism emerged. So what is post-structuralism? Post-structuralism is something that how do I say, that does not believe, that does not have a conviction in the structure, the way otherwise social structures are understood and perceived. So in post-structuralism, that structure is not accepted at all, because unfortunately, if you see the world order, not much agency is actually given to the poor people. No agency is given to the non-human actors, and agencies are only given to political personalities and the statecraft and people who have power, who have the right, or who have the medium or agency to exert power. But post-structuralism, it is understanding the world and engaging with the world from the inverse pyramid prism. So to get into the shoes of the have-nots, to get into the shoes of the vulnerable and majority section of the people who suffer from non-entitlement of rights, who suffer from multiple deprivations, social deprivation, ecological deprivation, economic deprivation, and all these deprivations which are actually connected to each other, and to write the history, to write the, or to develop scholarship from their perspectives. Because otherwise, if you think about history's school textbooks of our times, it's only the history of the Mauryas and the Mughals and the Rajputs and people like that. But what about the subaltern? What about the urban poor? What about the the local grassroots leaders who also led different kinds of movements, which are not movements like the Quit India or the civil disobedience, but which are movements like Mopla movement, or several other movements that happened in the countryside, which played such an important part in our independence, in Indian independence. But unfortunately, they were never documented in history, because we did not engage with the world from that perspective, from that prism. So post-structuralism, so I just gave the example of India. This example is applicable everywhere. So that is how, and that is why Michel Foucault and the other political philosophers and people coming from different backgrounds, they actually questioned the structure that was there, the social structure, and they made a bold move to actually write the history and to engage with the world from the have-nots perspective. people who were not given any agency, who were not given any voice in theoretical scholarship. So that is, in short, what post-structuralism is all about. Similarly, post-colonialism, that, to understand things from the perspective of, of the previously colonized world, right? And feminist geography, because women were not given any agency, and it is true, and that is why feminism or feminist scholarship is such an important age to be looked into. So all this, feminist geography, it means that women's involvement, attachment to nature, women's position, affiliation in society, to social order, all these need to be kind of explored. It's high time. It was high time. So that is the political that is the theoretical commitment of political ecology. It is theoretically committed to draw insights from post-structuralism, from post-colonialism, from feminist geography, to actually provide or formulate, right, to formulate alternative understandings of the world, right? So this is all about theoretical commitment of political ecology, and to to incorporate, to accommodate post-structuralism, feminism, post-colonialism within the ambit of political ecology, to actually understand the relationship between nature and society. So without incorporating all these important lenses of analysis that already came up during the 1950s, 60s, etc., political ecologists understood that they will not be able to do justice to their perspectivization of socio-natural interrelationship or correlation. That is why that is what the theoretical commitment of political ecology as a domain or political ecologist is all about, right? Hope it is clear. Is it clear? Can we move into the second commitment?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So methodological commitment. What do you think then is the methodological commitment in political ecology? Aditya, I think you already mentioned something, and Pranav, you also mentioned. Anyone else would like to make a quick remark on what do you think then is the methodological commitment? Are you sure you are absolutely clear with the with this thing, with theoretical commitment, more or less? I cannot say, it's not possible to be absolutely clear, because I am also absolutely not clear, because it's a complex domain. So it cannot, the confusions cannot get clear on a single day. But it's just it's the entry plane that we are taking now. So more or less, is it clear, the theoretical commitment, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
If I were to just sum it up, is
Yes.
it that a commitment that we'll adhere to new theoretical practices, new ways of studying things as we become more and more knowledgeable?
Yes, and alternative, understandings, alternative ways of knowing, if I put it like that, alternative ways of knowing the world.
Yes, ma'am. So
Yes.
not being lazy and sticking to old conventional ways, but striving to look for new ways to understand things.
Yes, and also to give voice to the people who were not given voices earlier. To so because that is very important, to give agencies to agents who were not given agencies earlier.
And this will come under the post-structuralism aspect.
Yes, and also post-colonialism, because post-structuralism is mainly
Right, I see.
Yes, and also feminism.
Can we say that some examples of post-structuralism were born out of post-colonialist thinking?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. These two are inherently interrelated. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes.
Okay, ma'am.
So, okay. So I now understand that you have more or less understood theoretical commitment along with me. So now tell me, what should be or what could be the methodological commitment in political ecology?
Ma'am, in methodological commitment, we consider the means for the problem we are studying, we consider the various cultural aspect and ethnicity of the group that we are studying.
Yes. So, but and then so Abhijit, I would request you to push a bit more. So, how will you do that? Methodology is all about the how question. So, how will you take a look into this ethnicity things? If you want to explore ethnicity, how will you do it?
Miss, we will go among the people and study about them more
Absolutely.
about the practices
Right.
and
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So, yes, Anand.
And one more important thing is conducting surveys amongst people. So after we got independence, we also conducted many different kinds of surveys all across the country to gather information about the people. And also we applied many different scientific and engineering related solutions to problems. So I think that should be the
Right. Yes,
methodological.
you have raised an important point, Anand. And when you say survey, so what kind of survey do you think it should be?
And like
Surveys already. So political ecologists did not start the tradition of survey. Survey is there from time immemorial. So do you think, Anand, the survey that political ecologists conduct is different from the survey conducted by non-political ecologists? Anand?
Ma'am, I think that in reference of political ecology, surveys should be related to people, like not very technical things, but things like male to female ratio and things like education rate level and things like this.
Right. Okay. Yes, thanks, Anand. So anyone else would like to elaborate on it, reflect on it a bit more?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am. I think that the surveys that he is talking about, we can also like the political ecology surveys can also depend on like we can look for what are the beliefs, what are the thinking about the people, so that like any of our action does not trigger a chain reaction in the people,
Yes.
does not trigger a like uplift movement and
very good. Very good. So being sensitive to the local context, right?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, also the survey should be anonymous, because these are political surveys. So if anything goes wrong, then things may turn out to be bad for the person filling the survey. So if they are anonymous, then people generally, it was found that people generally tend not to lie in anonymous surveys.
Right. So you also you are then harping on the ethical question.
Exactly,
So
ma'am.
yes, so ethics in survey designs. True. Yes, it's an important point. Very important, actually. Yeah. So anything else you want to reflect on? Anyone? Any final point? Okay, so I will, I will stop in the methodological commitment today, and tomorrow we will be having, discussions, right? Tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, like on Monday. So on Monday's class, there would be some discussions. So I'll lay it out, but let us first complete the methodological commitment in the next 3-4 minutes. So again, I would like you to read. Aman, would you like to read the methodological commitment section? Aman, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you be able to read the methodological section?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. So this part. Second. Just let me 1 second. 2 pages. Is it too small for you, or is it all right?
Oh, ma'am, it's all right.
Just 1 second. Give me a second. Yeah. Yes. So you should read this part, this section. Yeah.
Okay. Second, political ecology retains a methodological commitment to in-depth, direct observation involving qualitative research of some sort, often in combination with quantitative methods and/or document analysis. As Davis, chapter 20, this volume, points out,
Most political ecology is at least partly historical in its analysis. Some understanding of the place-based, historically sedimented social relations of production and exchange and environmental practices is crucial for political ecological analysis. Underpinning these methodological commitments is a conviction that they are vital elements of nature, society relations that cannot be read from a social or spatial distance. Example via remote sensing, extensive surveys, soil or water samples, etc. But can only be ascertained through intensive, open-ended, qualitative methods, most often in combination. Political ecology is thus methodologically plural, and most studies employ some combination of qualitative, broadly ethnographic methods, interviewing, direct observation, with historical documentary analysis, and frequently quantitative analysis using GIS, survey methods, and an array of methods common in ecological science.
Okay, thanks, Aman. So, Aman, tell me, from this entire paragraph, if I ask you to choose a keyword, the keyword can be a phrase also. The keyword can be a combination of two words, or can be a small phrase also, whatever. So, what for you is the most important, thing in this paragraph? You can take a close look once more and then reflect.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Aman.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yes, tell me. Yes, yeah, Aman, you can just make an attempt. You don't need to worry at all.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Like political ecology is actually a combination of qualitative and quantitative analysis.
It is to you the most important, information in this paragraph, right? And why
Yes,
is that so? You're all right, very good. But why is it the most important piece of information for you from this paragraph? What do you learn from this? What is the message?
Yes, ma'am, you were saying something.
No. I'm just asking that why is it the most important information, piece of information to you?
So, like it's saying in the paragraph, that
Yeah,
is
I think yes, you
methodologically.
can say. But Aman, you just finish and then yeah.
Ma'am, because it's saying that political ecology should be done like via various kind of analysis. It should be open-ended and you need to do some analysis in
Right. So let me help you. So maybe if I'm wrong, you tell me that no, you were wrong. I did not think on those lines. So I think you are saying that this is the most important. This appears to be the most important statement for you because you just then understand that if you want to apply political ecology, what kind of approach or what kind of tangible methodology you will be actually applying. So if you need to do if you are planning to do a research on, for example, soil erosion in any region in Rajasthan, right, in one of the villages in Rajasthan, in Jodhpur, so then you exactly know that how you have to plan your research design, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. So someone said, thank you. Thanks, Aman. Thanks. Yes, you want to add something, Aman?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have to take case
Okay.
studies and then
Yes, yes,
understand it.
yes. Yeah, because through this line, you absolutely get a hint of what you have to do when you have to do a research as a political ecologist, right? So somebody said methodologically plural. Who? Somebody said
Yes, ma'am.
methodologically plural. Who? Aman, you only said
Ma'am,
methodologically plural.
yes,
Okay,
ma'am. Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
this is because if you would have asked me, I would have said methodologically plural. That's the most important keyword to me, and I'm very happy that we are resonating. So why, Aman, did you say methodologically plural is the most important thing to you after this sentence?
Ma'am, like you said, ki, why did you choose qualitative and quantitative? So we said ki it is methodologically plural. That's why, like,
Right.
we should focus
Yes.
on, methods
Yes. Yes.
to
So
analyze.
thank you. Yes. So I think like it is also very important for us to kind of remove any confusion on political economy, because often the field is criticized because it says that and more importantly the mainstream scientists and the quantitative people, they say that you only come up with qualitative case studies, and maybe these case studies are very in depth, but at the same time they are not scalable. So what we are learning maybe from 50 people, 50 Bhil people, so 50 people from the Bhil community in West Bengal. So what kind of reality can be portrayed from there? So it is just the story of 50 people in one particular village in West Bengal. So what kind of message it has to provide, or it has to kind of convey to the global scholarship on for example water techniques, right? So that is why again one of the criticisms that the political ecologists actually face. But I should remind you, one best thing about political ecology is this, that as many people pursue this, so the criticisms often are also from the internal members. So, and as we love political ecology, we are attached to it. It is, and we are like passionate with it. So we ourselves keep criticizing political ecology. And when I'm saying we ourselves keep criticizing, it means that we start becoming aware of some of the limitations, and we continuously keep on designing tools and strategies through which political ecology can be made more and more inclusive, right? And so continuous experimentation goes on so far as methodological design or research designs are concerned. So I will give my own case study when later you will see one, their topic is their HUP, historical urban political ecology. So I will narrate my experience, that what I did, how I experimented with political ecology, and what I came up with when I applied it in the context of urban Kolkata or peri-urban Kolkata. So whatever, but what is most important is this sentence is very, very important. This sentence, that if you take a look into this sentence, that underpinning this methodological commitment is a conviction that there are vital elements of nature society relations that cannot be read from a social or spatial distance. So when you are applying remote sensing, all of you know remote sensing. Remote sensing, what is remote sensing? Remote sensing, are you aware of remote sensing?
Ma'am, by remote sensing, do you mean like using satellites and stuff?
Right. Using satellite data. So, for example, and when do we use it? So, you want to map a land cover change in a particular area, or maybe a widespread area. You apply remote sensing. So there's those satellite, by capturing those satellite images and then analyzing those images, you will be able to know the amount of land that had a kind of change, maybe from a forest to agricultural patches, or maybe from agricultural patches to urban area, right? But does it say everything? So it gives you the like overall understanding or the view of transformation, but then you no more know the how do I say, you no more know the detailed descriptions of what led to this change. Maybe there are like sometimes very interesting twists in stories. So maybe one particular, you can see from satellite images that one particular area has absolutely got converted from, forest to agricultural lands. And you think that it is a bad change. But when you go to the field, you talk to the people and you reduce the social distance. You get stories through which you understand that the land cover change has been beneficial for the people of the community there. Maybe. So here what they're saying that if you just collect samples from water or if you just apply remote sensing, they are not sufficient methods through which you will be able to narrate the story of a particular region. So at the same time, it is also saying that these methods are not, it's not that they are unimportant, they are very important. Again, without remote sensing also you're going to do. So you have to do remote sensing. You have to, test the water samples. But at the same time, you also have to collect and carve out the ethnographic narratives from this. And then you compile the whole data set and you write the, specific story or you carve out the specific narrative of that particular area and the research topic. Getting it? So in our next class, I will give one example, and I was a discussant for one of the presentations by Emily Rains. And as a geographer, she has done a fascinating, she has, kind of applied a fascinating methodology of what she calls participatory innovative remote sensing. And she has applied it in the slums of 3 particular cities. I think one in Rajasthan, other one in Bangalore, and one in a South Indian city. And what she has actually done. So it is methodological pluralism. It is the cross-fertilization of quantitative and qualitative data, that can actually, that make political ecology or political ecologists to have a more robust, comprehensive and inclusive frame of understanding. So I'll just stop now and I will get in touch with the 2 groups by today or tomorrow. All right. And I'll meet you on Monday. So if possible, just take a look into the video lectures and the introduction of the handbook. All right. So all the very best. I will meet you all on Monday. And we'll get back to the groups, just those 16 students for the plan.
Ma'am,
Yes.
like each group will have a pre-decided topic for presenting, right? So the topic will be given by you for what exactly.
Yeah, I will do all the, I will, yes. There will be a concrete plan, no problem.
Okay.
Should not worry. If
And
needed, I'll also.
Can you also help us with some reading material from which we can prepare?
Of course.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, I'll have a foolproof plan. Let me think on it a bit because I have a whole day's packed. But I will manage some time today, or that is why I'm saying tomorrow maybe. By tomorrow, I'll have a foolproof plan for the 16 of you and for these 2 groups.
Okay, ma'am. Thank
you. All right then. Thank you. See you on Monday.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, volunteer for
comprehensive viva আছে সৌরদীপ আমাকে
ma'am, volunteers for we need volunteers for class highlights today.
Oh, acha. Who are the 2 students? Thank you.
Ma'am, can I
Shorodip.
volunteer?
Who are the 2 students for ঠিক আছে Snigdho, and who else?
Ma'am, I'll do it.
Who else will be accompanying, joining Snigdho? Okay, Omi and Snigdho.
Okay, ma'am, noted.
Thank you very much. ঠিক আছে then. I'm then I'll meet you all on Monday. Thanks, Shaurodip and Omi and Snigdho. Please compile the highlights and you have 1 week time. Or maybe if you are done by the next Monday, that should be fine. Okay then. Bye. See you on Monday.